My friends, what we are about to hear now is the anatomy of a historic surrender. The most powerful military system on the planet won the war on the battlefield, but has just been subdued at the negotiating table. What the mainstream media is desperately trying to cover up is that the recently signed agreement between the United States and Iran is not a peace treaty, it's a frightening capitulation. And I'm very sorry, but we're going to lay bare the harsh truth about how the Trump administration agreed to hand over a package of up to $300 billion to rebuild the Iranian regime. That's 75 times more than what was sent during the Obama era.
Look at how absurd this is.
The naval blockade will fall. All global sanctions will be lifted with lobbying from the Americans themselves. And the Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein of global oil, could have tolls charged by the Ayatollahs themselves in just 60 days. This is serious, my friends. No one is talking about this with the necessary courage, but the West's major allies, like Israel, have been thrown under the bus and left out of the negotiations, while the Iranian nuclear program remains untouched. The outrage in Washington is so overwhelming that Republican senators are already whispering behind the scenes at the White House about the real possibility of supporting impeachment against President Trump himself. To tear the veil off this true reverse Treaty of Versailles and expose that the most powerful man in the world signed a surrender document, I set the cameras rolling and brought in analyst Paulo Henrique Araujo straight from the halls of the White House in Washington. Get ready to understand what really happened in the dark of these negotiations. My friends, I know it's not easy, I know it hurts the heart, but Paulo Henrique Araujo, what happened, my friend?
Simo, it's always a pleasure to be with you, my man, so let's go. Look, there are several points we need to analyze about this agreement, and I even need to give some context about what's happening in American society so that everything is clear and transparent for our audience. First point, there is an aversion to this conflict in Iran. The majority opinion in American society, regardless of political side, is that, look, this war isn't a good thing. It wasn't a good idea to get into this war. This is a clear point. Obviously, among the Republicans, which is President Trump's party, or those who sympathize with the Republicans, the people more to the right, they understand the need for this. It even surprised a lot of Democrats. Just look at that. Even politicians in the Senate understand that the action President Trump took against Iran was necessary. The big problem here was how to get out of this mess. And this is where things start to get complicated, because there is also an understanding that somehow the war needed to end. Yeah, just to mention here, I've said this before the war started, a gallon of gas here in Washington, D.C. cost $2.89. At the peak of the war here, it was already at $4.60. Now it's around $3.90 at this exact moment, okay? Now, what do we have in the middle of all this? President Trump made decisions and took some actions based on the agreement that was signed, which go against, first of all, what he always said about Iran. Yeah, he brought up some points that are worse than the agreement Obama made back in 2015 and 2016 with Iran. And it drew a lot of criticism from American society. And here I have a number, okay, Shimo? It's 75 times worse. We're going to explain.
That's it. Come on, man.
Yeah, 75 times worse. And there is a feeling within American society today that, well, among Democrats and the left, what's the narrative? Well, okay, Trump went there. He started a war that shouldn't have been started. But the agreement he's signing is simply handing over all the necessary structure for the terrorists to have more power. That's the left's narrative. The narrative of a significant part, the majority of the right, the hawkish wing is, okay, you started the war was necessary, we agree with the attack, you did the right thing. But the agreement you're making isn't from someone who's winning, it's from someone who's losing the war. This isn't an agreement, this is a surrender. That's the narrative that's been going around in the corridors here in the United States. And the outrage is so intense, especially in the American Congress, Shimon, that we have to, of course, take this very much in the heat of the moment. But there are already senators saying that the midterm elections are lost. We're going to lose the House of Representatives here, which is called the lower House of Representatives. The Democrats are going to try to push for impeachment because of the issue with tariffs and the matter of the deal with Iran. And many Republican senators are saying off the record that they will support an impeachment measure against Donald Trump.
Wow, that's a bombshell, Paolo. It's a bombshell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that this feeling will last until November, Shimon.
But that's how it is today.
Bringing today's fever pitch here,
No.
because really the pressure cooker exploded in the kitchen. Okay, what's that stuff on the wall?
Wow. This deal is really horrifying because look, before the attack, before the war, Iran was suffocated, right? In other words, this military operation was supposed to settle the score, and in the end, you'll end up financing terrorism around the world. It's really absurd. Someone also asked me, Paolo, why give 300 billion to Iran? Why? Why doesn't Trump just take his little stool and leave and just leave everything broken there? Take the ships, take the soldiers, and leave the Middle East without giving a single real or dollar to Iran. Right? I understand the legitimacy of the question, but obviously that's not exactly how it works when you have an obligation there. Let's put it this way. Geopolitically, you can't just hand over the Strait of Hormuz, which is the world's oil bottleneck, on a silver platter to the regime. But it seems that's exactly what's happening right now at this very moment. And then there's the issue of Israel as well, which is sad for us to talk about here on the channel. But the one who ends up being thrown under the bus is Israel, Paulo Henrique, because Israel is on Iran's side. Can you imagine Israel having to deal with a strengthened regime? Although I have the following observation, the Ayatollah has died. The main Iranian generals have also gone to hell. Iran internally is completely destroyed, especially when it comes to infrastructure tied to the Revolutionary Guard, missile infrastructure, government facilities, and so on. Iran is destroyed, and there is a war right now between the different factions of the Iranian government who are also killing each other, and then there's the factor of the people. Not necessarily that the people will have the strength to rise up, but there are people there who are totally dissatisfied. So that's the context. But really, Paulo, no matter how much we try to favor Trump here, no, he was the guy who had courage. No one managed to do what he did, and that's true. No one has ever gone this far, it's true, but no one has ever done such a huge stupidity like this. It's showing. Although, guys, Paulo put it on Paulo there, production, although, look, they signed a memorandum. There's 60 days for everything to go wrong and for none of this to happen.
That's right, Shimon, but here's the point. I even published an article analyzing these points, okay? That's there, mainly on my Twitter. It's open, it's pinned there for everyone at RPH Araujo. I read all those points, and there are some items that are extremely dangerous, Shimon. And I want to bring up some of those points, and that's what's causing all the issues. I'll be really quick here, but look, point one talks about the ceasefire. And the ceasefire, it says there that it involves all fronts, meaning the allies of the United States and the allies of Iran. But the American allies, in this case Israel, didn't take part in the negotiations, so they're not signatories to the agreement.
They're not even mentioned by name, right? Israel isn't even cited by name in this proposal.
It's not.
That's right.
And then they bring up the issue of Lebanon. And who are Iran's allies? Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, who also weren't part of it. So how are they going to control that? And that's one of the points that's been leaking out a lot from behind the scenes, which Netanyahu always used to say to President Trump, Donald, how are you going to control that? Okay, that was one of the points Netanyahu was bringing up in the discussions. There were discussions, arguments, exchanges. There were curse words exchanged in the last few days between Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Trump confirmed that he used curse words with Benjamin Netanyahu. Point two, the United States promised not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs, which is being classified as a betrayal of the Iranian people.
True.
Because Donald Trump said, look, take over the institutions, stay in the streets, help is on the way. After that, it took months, mostly because of the actions of Jay Vance, the vice president. That help didn't come in time. And now the same relatives of the 40,000 killed by the Iranian regime are alone inside Iran again without the promised support.
Notice how the narrative has shifted, right? Keep going, we're here to help you. Then yesterday at the G7, he must have some problem or someone got into his head, Paulo. Yesterday he said Iran has the right to have ballistic missiles. The regime has the right to have ballistic missiles. Look at the difference in the narrative, guys.
And the point here isn't even whether they have the right or not. What was Israel's point? That these ballistic missiles wouldn't be powerful enough to reach their territory.
Right? Exactly.
Not even that was included. So look, you mentioned the 60-day deadline, point three. There's a catch here. Okay, Shimon, the 60-day deadline can be extended indefinitely as long as both parties agree. In other words, this 60-day deadline is basically just for show. What if both parties agree to extend? If they do, that's fine, and this could drag on for years.
And it stays with Iran. And then, that's the worst part because this 60-day deadline now, guys, which starts to take effect from Friday, Iran keeps the uranium inside its territory.
More than that, Shimon, let me get it for you. I'll address it soon.
Let's go.
It's worse than that. Look, the American naval blockade ends in up to 30 days, okay? So what do we have then? The question that remains, it's exactly the issue of proximity, that the Americans need to pull their forces away from the area. And the text isn't clear if that includes the bases in the Arab countries in the region, okay? That's ambiguous. The Strait of Hormuz, this was the biggest gift from the agreement. Okay, Shimon? Because what does the wording about the Strait say regarding the Strait of Hormuz? That for the next 60 days, Iran won't charge anyone anything. But it's clear in the wording itself that after the 60 days, if Iran wants, together with Oman, they will charge a toll in whatever way the two of them decide, and that's how it will be done for the Strait. In other words, before the war, this didn't exist. Now, the world will have a huge toll on the route that carries 20% of the world's oil.
Imagine, Paulo. That's already a reason for impeachment, right? A bombshell like that, but there's another side. Well, you haven't finished your list, right? Did you finish your list there? Come on, let's go.
Let me just go here. Look.
It's shocking, my God.
$300 billion to rebuild Iran. And one question that's being raised here is that most of the targets destroyed in the war were military targets. Military. So what exactly is going to be rebuilt inside Iran? And that's what's being asked here in the United States. And then there's a semantic discussion because the staunchest supporters of the agreement, right, around President Donald Trump, the vice president's group, say the following, but it's not U.S. money. So what is the semantic discussion? Because the United States is the guarantor that this money will arrive, so it doesn't matter. And probably most of this money will come from Qatar's sovereign fund. So we can see how problematic this is. Your audience knows the issue with Qatar well, Shimon. And look, this is that 75-fold figure I mentioned earlier. Obama sent around $4 billion to the Ayatollah's regime back in 2016. Now Trump is promising 75 times that. That's more than Ukraine itself received, okay? As a loan. Ukraine received a loan. They're going to have to pay it back. They're going to have to pay it back. Now, there's another point that's shocking, my dear Shimon. The end of all sanctions. Not only will the sanctions end, all of them. And the United States has stated that sanctions anywhere in the world against any country will end. And what does that mean? That the United States has to advocate against any country that refuses to suspend U.S. sanctions. For example, Germany might turn around and say, no, I won't lift the sanctions because I don't agree with this. It is the obligation of the United States to act in defense of lifting these sanctions in favor of Iran against Germany. And what's worse, this will be settled within the UN Security Council. The United States now has to defend Iran within the UN Security Council. Point 8, the nuclear program continues. That's right. Iran reaffirms that, look, it will neither seek nor develop nuclear weapons. But it reaffirms, in other words, Iran has always said that. And what changes? Nothing yet, Shimon. I even put that here in my text. The fate of the enriched uranium and the issue of enrichment will be discussed based on a satisfactory framework to be agreed upon at the end. In other words, we promise to talk about it later. Now, point 9 is the worst. The Iranian nuclear program remains as it is. Iran will maintain the status quo of its current nuclear program, and that's not a suspension. It's keeping things as they are now. And the United States is committed to doing nothing, not attacking, not passing any resolution about it. In other words, the Iranian nuclear program can continue at its current stage, okay? Iranian oil goes back on the market without sanctions. The issue of suspension, I let this one slip. The issue of suspension of das. What else do the sanctions address, Shimon? That any and all beneficiaries Iran wants to pay are Iran's problem. So here this gives a wide margin. It means that if Iran wants to keep sending money through money laundering, money, bridges, whatever it is to Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, they will continue. Because the funding to the resistance groups, as they call them, continues. That's not part of the agreement. And no one can question where Iran is sending money or who they are paying, okay? Look at the size of this problem here. So all of Iran's funds are also released once the memorandum is signed, okay? All of Iran's frozen funds are unfrozen, and the United States also has to negotiate with other countries, like in the example I gave about the sanctions. A monitoring mechanism, but without any teeth, okay? So a mechanism will be created to monitor the implementation. It doesn't specify who monitors, with what powers, or what happens in case of non-compliance. And here, the last 2 points. The real negotiations only start after the American government has already done its part. In other words, these 60 days will only really start to count for the discussions after the Trump administration has already implemented points 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11 of the agreement. In other words, after lifting the blockade, withdrawing forces, opening the strait, releasing oil, and unfreezing Iranian assets, Iran will negotiate from a position of financial strength, Shimon. And the last point, the final agreement will be guaranteed by the UN Security Council, where Russia and China have full veto power.
There you have it, folks. Paulo Henrique Araujo reporting live from behind the scenes at the White House in Washington. Paulo, this is a terrible deal. 2 things come to mind. The first is someone kidnapped a relative of Trump, and now he's going to give everything up to save the life of this loved one, because that's what makes sense, right? Or they implanted a chip in his head, and now it's the Ayatollah speaking. It's not Trump anymore. Just like the Lula situation here, right? Conspiracy theory, right? Lula isn't Lula anymore. It's already Lula's clone who's running the country. Or a third thing that comes to my mind, or Iran has turned into Venezuela, right? What? Huh? What's your assessment? Has it turned into a Venezuela or not? Because in Venezuela, they came, arrested Maduro, left the regime, right, of, I forgot her name now, the dictator, the vice dictator, Deutsche Rodriguez. Exactly, God, Deutsche Rodriguez. But who's in charge there now in the States? Who's running things inside Venezuela? It's the Americans, it's the United States, including now with troops inside. Hey, Paulo Henrique, isn't that it?
No, Shimo, that's not it, okay? It's not. And that's when things get complicated, okay? Because, yeah, President Trump himself puts himself in a very complicated situation. Just look at the moment when he's signing Marco Rubio's expression, his own, what he says when he's signing. He says, it's very hard to do this here. It's not the expression of someone who's happy. It seems that in a way, Trump is being overruled. But here, I think there's something important. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion about this. War is nothing more than diplomacy by other means. When you can't resolve it through diplomacy, you go to war. But Shimo, every war ends at the diplomatic table. There's no war that hasn't ended. You can kill everyone on the other side. Whoever is left goes to a table for diplomacy to end it, to sign. So what happens? In diplomacy, nothing was achieved. They went to war. The United States won the military war. They destroyed a lot. what happens? When it was time to sit at the table to define the treaty, the agreement, Iran won the war.
It's the Treaty of Versailles. It's the Treaty of Versailles in reverse.
It's not in reverse because it was signed at the Palace of Versailles yesterday.
Damn, what a mess. So we're screwed. We're screwed. Hey, Paolo, look, that's terrible news, huh? I hope that when you come back here, you bring better news. But the world keeps turning, right, Paolo? Maybe in 30 days, we might be saying, man, Trump was a genius. The guy was brilliant. But at least on the surface of what we're seeing, it was a horrendous, horrible deal for the United States. As Paolo says, he won the war, won the explosion, but lost the negotiations. And in the end, those Ayatollahs will be there, right? Celebrating if any of them are still alive, right? Guys, now let's wait and see how things unfold. Polo, you have two important books that I would like you to show, right? Talk about them here so our audience can get more informed about what's happening in the world, including in Latin America, guys. This situation that we saw over there in Iran has already started to pop up here in Latin America as well.
That's right, my friend. Look,
if you allow me,
I'll suggest three here.
Okay, Chico.
Because my first book talks a lot about the inner workings of American politics, which is the United States and the Party of Shadows, okay? Mainly how the lobbies work internally, especially George Soros's, who is one of the central characters in this book. Yeah, also the fall of democracy in Brazil, which is a compilation of several articles, several chronicles about how Brazil was losing its freedom, right? Democracy in Brazil was collapsing. And my main work, Foro de São Paulo and the Great Homeland, which is about the Foro de São Paulo. And this Bolivarian ideology, right, of the Great Homeland dominates the issues within the continent. And how were the PT, Lula and company forged within the Sandinista dictatorship of Nicaragua? And also by Fidel Castro, how they subverted part of the Holy Catholic Church. In the midst of all this, and more than that, Shimon, how today they carry out many of these actions, not only in political circles, but also criminal ones on the continent, my dear.
Paolo, your YouTube address, because now the people who are following us here, my community will go there to follow you. Guys, let's get Paolo to 10,000 subscribers now. Shall we? Go ahead, Paolo.
People will find me on two channels, right? PH Araujo in the United States, where we're broadcasting together right now, and PH Vox, which is also my analysis channel, right? The longer ones. And you can also find me on Instagram, Farojo Real, and on Twitter, Farojo.
Comment this, guys. I came from Anus in Brazil. I came from Shimon Oliveira. Guys, I sincerely hope that all of this is just a big fantasy, a big strategy from Trump, and that this changes, right? May these 60 days serve to show the world that you can't make deals, that terrorists don't respect agreements. And if they do respect the agreement, well, that's good. But the agreement, the way it was designed, this memorandum, it's really, as we saw here with Paulo, it's terrible. It's terrible for Israel. And I want you to comment here with the keywords so we can understand your opinion. Good deal, bad deal. Type this and we will understand your level of awareness about what is happening in the world. We hope for the best for Israel, the best for the West, the best for the United States, and the best for the Iranian people. Because the system operates in the shadows and uses the power of the old media to dictate what you should or shouldn't think about deals that change the fate of the world. Don't be a hostage to this invisible dictatorship of narratives. Access my exclusive and completely censorship-free platform now, Our Intelligence Bunker. We are already more than 3,000 elite analysts inside funding the truth and studying real geopolitics every day. Point your phone at the QR code that appears on your screen now or click the pinned link in the description. And it's in the first comment too, okay? Right now. Pay close attention. Every single day, an avalanche of people asks me, Shimo, how do you manage to speak to millions of people on YouTube every month? How do you master communication? To the point of reaching almost 1 million subscribers across all social networks combined? Well, my friends, thinking about that, my team and I came up with a killer idea. And no, it's not just another theoretical course to fill time. Don't worry, it's an in-person immersion, brutal, physical, right here in my studios, hands-on. You'll learn to read codes, understand triggers, and master them. What guarantees my absolute success in high-impact communication? So I ask you, looking you in the eye, what if I open the black box of my method? For you to come here, step into my studio, and sit at this same table face to face, would you like to have this opportunity? Write it now in the comments. I want to, because we're going to bring news that will change the game forever. Stop wasting time trying to find a good movie to watch on Netflix, not on Amazon. I used to waste an hour choosing something good that didn't have woke culture, that didn't have that annoying whining. Well, we've solved that. We created a channel with series and movies giving tips on what to watch with your family on the weekend. So, the link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that will appear on the screen. In fact, I'm recommending it several times now, but I'll keep recommending it. The series Tehran, for you to understand how things really happen inside Iran, is really cool. Now, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video because it takes a lot of work to make. Yes, my friends, open your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you next time. Until then.